Think back to the coldest night you've ever known, the kind where every breath turned into fog and the wind slipped through the smallest cracks, biting your skin. Now, imagine there is no heater, no electricity, only a small fire glowing in the dark and a roof of rough timber and earth above your head. The floor is frozen soil. Your blanket is fur stiff and heavy. The night stretches endlessly, and the cold presses in from all sides. Yet somehow, families endured it. Children, elders, mothers, fathers, they survived. This was daily life for the Vikings, a people who faced winters harsher than most of us can imagine. And tonight, we gather around the fire to uncover how they did it. Now, picture the heart of a Nordic winter. The wind cuts like knives. Snow piles high against the walls, and the night brings temperatures down to -30. Children still had to sleep. The elderly still had to endure. There was no gas to burn, no electric blanket to hide beneath, only the wisdom of survival and the strength of a community holding together. Imagine lying in that silence. The cold pressing in through the floor, the roof groaning under heavy snow. Still, they survived. Not once, not twice, but through countless winters. So how did they do it? How did the Vikings face nights so cold and still wake to build ships, chop wood, and dream of distant seas? Now, imagine the Viking longhouse, not just a hut, but a shelter shaped by centuries of survival. Picture thick wooden beams rising from frozen earth. Between them, heavy turf earth, packed tight, layered like armor. And outside, more planks shielding against wind and rain. 3 layers in all, wood, soil, and board. Together, they held the warmth the way a thick quilt holds the body on a bitter night. Above the roof was no ordinary roof. It was covered with living sod grass and roots binding the earth like stitches in a blanket. In winter, it trapped heat. In spring, it sprouted green, blending the home into the land itself. Many houses sank partly into the ground. The earth cradled them, keeping out the worst of the cold, like a mother's embrace against the storm. Inside ceilings were low, walls pulled close. All of it designed not for comfort, but for survival. And if you walked in, you would feel it. The dim light, the smoky air, the steady warmth clinging to every corner. To the Vikings, this was not just shelter. It was a cocoon against the endless winter, a place where fire family and even animals breathed life into the darkness. Remember this well, the longhouse was more than wood and soil. It was the difference between life and death, woven carefully by hands that refused to surrender to the cold. Now close your eyes and picture the center of a Viking home. There is no iron stove, no chimney, no modern fireplace, only a shallow pit carved into the earth. From it, a fire glows low and steady, not roaring, not wild, just a quiet flame smoldering through the long night. The smoke does not rush out. It lingers. It curls under the roof beams, blackening the wood, stinging the eyes. But that smoke was no enemy. It preserved the timbers, kept out insects, and sealed warmth into the sod above. The Vikings understood something simple. If the smoke left too quickly, the heat would leave with it. So the fire burned on day after day, a heart that never stopped beating. And at night, when the cold pressed hardest, they pulled stones from the fire. Heated red wrapped in fur or sheepskin, they were tucked beneath sleeping benches. Those stones held the warmth of the earth itself. Like hot water bottles carved from stone, they glowed softly, keeping families warm until dawn. This was not comfort as we know it. It was survival. The fire gave light, yes, but more than that, it gave hope. A promise that even in the blackest night, the heart of the home would keep beating, and the family inside would see another morning. Now imagine the family settling down for the night. The fire still glows in the center, but around the edges of the longhouse, the benches are crowded. Here, people did not sleep alone. They pressed close, parents, children, elders, all huddled beneath heavy hides. And they were not the only ones. Beside them, the animals rested too. Cows, sheep, goats, even horses near the doorway. Strange to us, perhaps, but to the Vikings, it was life itself. A single cow gave off the warmth of a 1,000-watt stove. Sheep were like living wool blankets, radiating heat through the night. And the family dog curled at the foot of the bed, a small pillow of warmth and loyalty. The house became more than shelter. It became a shared body, each creature adding its heat to the whole. Scholars today call it shared thermal mass. The Vikings didn't need a name for it. They simply knew together they were warmer. Together they were safer. It was a bond of survival. Man and beast breathing the same smoky air, sharing warmth, sharing life. And in that closeness through the long dark of winter, they found something stronger than fire. They found community. They found family. And that more than anything else kept them alive. Now listen, my child, because this was a lesson every Viking learned early. Never take off your layers when the night turns cold. The Vikings wore everything they owned: wool tunics, linen underclothes, fur-lined cloaks pulled tight at the shoulder with brooches, leather hoods, heavy trousers, sheepskin boots, each piece trapping a little more warmth until their bodies became living sleeping bags. They called it nothing special, but today we know it as the onion method, layer upon layer, one barrier after another, holding heat, close keeping frost out. Outer layers had to fight the wind, thick felted wool, stiff leather, even seal skin to keep water away. Wolf and bear fur added weight, but also life-saving insulation. Some garments were stitched with lanolin-rich wool, the kind that stayed warm even when wet. Nature's own Gore-Tex long before the name was ever spoken. And for their feet, they stuffed socks with moss or straw, homemade padding that kept toes from freezing solid on icy ground. No, they did not undress to sleep. They bundled tighter. Parents wrapped children in every scrap of fabric they had. Elders pulled furs across their shoulders, and when the family lay down together, all those layers merged a fortress of cloth and hide against the winter night. So remember this wisdom when the world outside is cold and merciless. Sometimes the only armor you need is the coat upon your back and the warmth of those lying beside you. Now, let me tell you another secret of survival. The fire in the hearth was only half the story. The other fire burned inside the belly. The Vikings knew this well. On winter nights, they did not eat light. They feasted on bone broth thick with marrow, on barley, porridge stirred with lard, on strips of dried fish, and when they were lucky, whale blubber so rich it could keep a man warm for hours. One spoonful of fat held more energy than any bread. It digested slowly, releasing heat, little by little, like a steady flame glowing from within. Before bed, families gathered for a final meal. A hot cup of broth, steaming and heavy, sipped slowly, so the warmth spread through chest and arms, down to fingers and toes. That warmth lingered deep into the night. Elders would say, "Eat before you sleep. Fill your stomach so the fire will keep burning till morning." It was wisdom as old as the snows themselves. Food was not just fuel, it was defense. It was the inner hearth, a shield against the cold no blanket could match. So as the storm raged outside and frost clawed at the door, the Vikings lay down bellies full, the inner fire glowing bright, and trusted it to carry them safely through the night. Now, my friends, imagine the final layer of warmth. Not fire, not clothing, not even food, but people themselves. The Vikings knew the body gives off heat like a lantern glowing in the dark. One body warms another, and when many gather close, their warmth becomes a shield. So at night, families did not spread apart. They drew together. Parents pressed children against their sides. Elders leaned close. Even the family dog curled beneath the furs. Under heavy hides, they formed one living mass, breathing the same smoky air, sharing not only stories but breath. and warmth, and life itself. A family of 4 could raise the air around them by 40 degrees, enough to turn a freezing night into a night of survival. It was simple, it was powerful, and it was human. In that closeness they found comfort. In that closeness they found safety. And in that closeness they found each other. So, when the world outside turned dark and merciless, the Vikings did as we do tonight, gathering shoulder to shoulder around a common fire, pushing back the cold with nothing more than the warmth of community. And so, as the flames flicker low, let us remember the truth the Vikings carried through the centuries. They did not survive winter alone. No single warrior, no lone mother could endure the endless nights of frost. They survived together, side by side, through the strength of family, through the warmth of animals, through the bond of community. They knew what we sometimes forget, that survival is not only about strength of the body, but about strength of the heart, a faith that tomorrow would come, and that the cold would pass. Every layer of wool, every stone pulled from the fire, every spoonful of broth, and every shoulder leaned upon it, all wove into one story. A story of people who refused to surrender to the dark. And perhaps that is the lesson we must carry tonight, that no matter how harsh the storm or how long the winter we endure, not by standing apart, but by standing together. So take comfort in this thought: the night is never as cold when we share it, and the dawn always feels near when we wait for it as one. And so, as the last sparks fade into the night, we close this story of how the Vikings survived the coldest winters. They did it with fire and stone, with fur and food, with animals and each other, but most of all, with faith that winter would end and dawn would come again. Yet the Vikings were not content to simply endure. When the snows melted, they looked beyond the horizon. They built ships of oak and iron and set sail into waters no map had ever named. Without compass, without chart, they found new lands that would change the course of history. That, my friends, is another tale for another fire. If you wish to hear it, stay close and join me for the next story. Until then, keep warm, hold fast to one another, and remember every winter, no matter how dark, always gives way to spring.